afternoon. My name is Joseph Lloyd and I source cars for people on a professional basis, hence the name of my channel, Lloyd Vehicle Consulting. 4 years ago, I was asked to come up with a series of videos that were filmed inexpensively. We don't use digital cameras, we don't use fluid head tripods, we don't use shotgun microphones, we wear tatty shirts, we just use a phone. But we look at cars that you can buy for a budget up to £1,000 only, and we very much enjoy ourselves. These are cars that might be in cosmetically bad condition. You might see oil leaks, rattly dashboards and cosmetic imperfections, but we go all over the country and we find these very inexpensive cars that you all seem to enjoy watching. Well, viewers, it seems we're back in a familiar place, because 4 years ago this is actually where I for the first time drove my 1989 Nissan Sunny. The gentleman who owned that car until recently has just bought another one, and it's not a Nissan or anything, it's a Peugeot. It's a 106 1.1 Independence from 2003. Yes, this is not in perhaps the most pristine condition. It's done 109,000 miles. But yeah, it's fine really for like a £500 car this was. We've got sort of various things inside here that take up room in the boot. It's not too bad though for such a small car. I can't believe these were made for so long. They're made for absolutely ages, right the way through to 2003, from 1991 onwards. The spare was actually under there, it's under the floor. Right, we're just going to get in the car for a second because it is a little bit wet. Yeah, you get in, Mr. Bridgen. So we're going to get inside and just take a look at the interior. It is a very peculiar interior, this one, because it's one of the late ones. We've got some Independence graphics on there. Let's shut this door. One of the weird things about this car, I don't know if it's just this particular 106 or others, is that rev counters doesn't work. It doesn't work at all, which is not so good. Also, the gear lever has had several attempts at being replaced, and you can see that the travel on there is particularly bad. We've got this really weird stereo. The previous owner did have this in, and we've got no air conditioning. Now, on these Saxos and 106s, the Saxos are very similar to one of these. They have a sort of blower motor with the air conditioning that takes the close of the glove box. I don't know if it's the case on these. That's why I don't think you'll see too many of these with air conditioning, because they didn't want to sacrifice a glove box for it. This car, being very late, has an airbag. The airbag came with a facelift in July 1996. The dashboard is a little bit different from the earlier ones. I think this control down here and these sort of things, which are very similar to the later 205s, which had a new dashboard in about 88. I think these are original. These stalks look very familiar as well, don't they? But some of the kind of materials are slightly different. I think this instrument binnacle's different, but it's all very similar. One problem with these cars, and it's sort of thing you have to adjust, you have to sort of look at if you're going to buy one, is this pedal box. It is tiny. It's also right over to the left. Now, you get used to it. It's not the most uncomfortable car I've ever driven. For example, I find Revo 25s of this sort of era as well, because they were selling against each other at the time, even less comfortable than this because of the steering wheel and also the clutch. It's fine, you know. It's not the end of the world. I mean, this is a little like city car thing. You're not going to be necessarily doing massive journeys in this. Right, I think we'll get out a second as well. We'll just keep going. Leave Mr. Bridgen inside so he can shelter from the elements. We'll keep going though. So I think these facelifted 106s do look quite good. I think the Saxos don't look as good as this at all, which is a shame in a way, because you know, they competed much in the same market. But similar underneath them, and similar also to the AX, which came out way before this. So yeah, typical sort of Peugeot house style of a time, very similar to like a 306 or a 205. One of the problems with these, and it's the same with a 306 and a 205, is they rust from the inside out. So you've got to look inside the boot and take some of the carpet off to see if the arches are still okay. To be honest, for a car of their price and a car of their era, they're not that bad for rust. It's just by now, you know, this is one of the newer examples, and it's over 20 years old, so you've got to be aware of that. I'm not sure I want to sort of kneel down and look to see the spare wheel cradle, which is under the floor, classic Peugeot style. But yeah, I think for the money he's paid for this, which is like half no budget reviews money, £500 with a year's MOT, I think it's okay. We'll have a look a bit more of the interior in a bit. Mr. Manning from the Matty's Cars channel required me to get in, so while Mr. Brisbane just sits there, I'm going to just pull this seat up and get in. Actually, there's a fair bit of sort of space in here, really, for such a small car. Let's move that out the way. There we go. Actually, that's not really a problem. There's no noises that Mr. Manning will be hearing that are sort of disturbing or anything. There we go. It's not the most sort of room, and neither is a Saxo or anything. Headroom's okay. Most likely with one of these, and this has been the same for many, many years, ever since these came out, you'd be sort of putting a couple of friends in the back of one of these, who are coming with you, and you're a young person, you want to save money on your insurance and things, and they'd be a bit cramped in here, but you're giving them a lift, so they better shut up. That's sort of the best thing, really. Notice as well, we don't get any seat height adjustment. It's just like this, and the windows are just old-fashioned pop-out things. But if you want to just have like an older daily car, have something that's very cheap to run and parts of it is good, which it is, still of these, that's fine. One thing I will do once I get out of here, pulling this little lever, is show you these really weird seat graphics. So yeah, if you had a GTI, you'd have some much nicer seats than these, but look at this sort of weird seat graphic that this has got. Very, very strange. Yeah, just a very basic plastic steering wheel and no electric windows, no electric mirrors, no sunroof. The only thing the independent model really got you is power steering and, well, these weird seats. And that's about it. Right, let me just have a look under the bonnet. So right whilst the rain is not coming down, here is the 1.1 TU engine generating about 59 horsepower in this particular car. It's tempted to TU engine straight away by the shape of the rocker cover and also that oil filler cap. They're not too bad, these. They do have a reputation for blowing head gaskets, which, the Saxo I drove in 2019 that belongs to Mr. Manning from Matty's Cars channel, that has had a head gasket replacement. You also need to make sure that these engines have their cam belts done regularly, because they're quite sensitive to them being skipped if you don't do it. The cam belt cover, I think, is probably this one on this side there. It doesn't look too difficult to do that. The gearbox is just there. It's not you can also see a lot of the floor, so not the most difficult car to work on by modern standards. I mean, elements of this date back to the mid-80s, so you wouldn't expect that. But yeah, for a little sort of cheap run around, it's ideal, isn't it, really? Too much stuff in here. Never mind. So here we are, we're on the way. Presumably they call this the Independent Special Edition because a lot of these were actually first cars, and someone would go into a Peugeot dealership in 2003 and look at these sort of final special editions and think, well, that's got cheap insurance or free insurance or something, that'll be suitable for my son or daughter when they pass their test. And it's got power steering. It's not really got anything else in it, but it has got power steering. So this has the famous 1.1 TU engine, which only has 59 horsepower. Now, it actually was even worse at the start of 106 production in 1991, because there was an even lower powered version of the TU engine in these, a 1 litre, but in some models only produced 44 horsepower. I think in some of the Saxos, the 1 litres were sort of about 49. So yeah, the majority of the 1.1s you see produced about 59 horsepower. With the 1.4s, there was a sort of variation in them between 72 and 74 horsepower, depending on the year, whether it's a very early carb one. You could also get a 97 brake horsepower version of the 1.4 in the XSI. The thing that I don't think we got in this country was the 1.3 Rally, which also produced about the same amount of power, around kind of, I think sort of 97 horsepower, around that. We never got those over here. It was some kind of weird quirk whereby that particular car required a 1.3 engine, not a 1.4. Because otherwise the XSI and the Rally 1 models were quite similar. So, but yeah, 1.4 generally about 74 horsepower most of the time. 1.6, it sort of went up to about 87, and that's not even the XSI. And then there was also a Rally 2 special edition where it produced about 102 horsepower. The most powerful 106 you could buy was the 116 brake horsepower GTI, which came in after the facelift in 1996. There are also some diesels available, but as usual, due to controversial government legislation and all kinds of other reasons, we don't talk about diesels on this channel. So what's this 1.1 Independence actually like? Well, because I learned to drive in a Citroen Saxo in 2000 and 2001, it feels all very familiar. The biggest difference between it is the dashboard is completely different. They're not the same at all. And also this car's got power steering, whereas the one I drove was a very, very early Saxo. It was actually part of the original press launch fleet. I think it was N349 SAX, like a gold colour. That didn't have power steering. It had this engine, but not power steering. It also had the most irritating little keypad immobiliser that every time you started the car, you had to put the code in. Now, if you stalled, you had about 20 seconds to start it before having to use the keypad again. But obviously if you're a learner, you might stall a lot, and I did because I was a learner, so that was very annoying. This car, you just put the key in and you turn it, which is fine. I prefer the styling, I think, of the 106 to the Saxo, even if the cars ostensibly are incredibly similar really underneath, and they're also similar to the AX. So this basic design of car, after the AX was launched, I think in 1986 those were launched, sort of went through to 2003. This is one of the very last of them on an 03 plate. 0 to 60 in this is it's about 15 seconds, I think. I'm not the fastest driver in the world, and rev counter is actually broken in this car for reasons I don't understand, but it feels for kind of moving around town and things like that, it'd be fine. 1 litre, I'm not sure about that, but this feels fine. I'm not sure what it's like on a motorway. Probably it's a bit noisy. But yeah, the driving position isn't quite as bad as I remember. It's not great because it's really offset to the left and the pedal box is very cramped, but it's okay. I just can't really believe how cheap these cars are. The gearbox is this typical kind of floppy thing, which I think, you know, some of the 205 suffered from as well, and the 306s. But it's fine, I suppose. The steering is really good, despite the power assistance taking away some of the feel of it. It's actually really good. One thing I would say is that the brakes on these aren't necessarily the best. You do have to be a bit careful. A lot of these don't even have ABS, so just be aware of that. The chassis just feels really good. It feels tight. This car. It's at 109,000 miles, and it's 21 years old. This car, and considering how sort of cheap they are on the second-hand market still, and really nothing more than the, you know, GTIs and the Rallies and Rally 2s and XSIs have any sort of classic following at the moment. This is probably quite a cheap way into older car ownership if you are prepared to put up with some compromise like this driving position, the fact that the car that you drive might not have ABS or power steering. But you know, that's fine. It takes you back to an era where that sort of thing wasn't required, and I'm very grateful to that. I can see why people really still quite enjoy these, although my left knee doesn't like this clutch very much. That was crazy there, viewers. Go and get caught in the rain, but it's okay. We managed to complete most of it so far. So the 106 had an enormous number of trim levels. Obviously the car was in production for about 12 years, and the 3-door came out first, and the 5-door about 92. At the start, the trim levels were the XN, the XN Plus, the XN Graduate. I remember the Graduate Special Edition. The XL, the XR, the XS, the XSI, which was the sort of mildly sporty one before the GTI came out, the XT, and then of course there's things like the Mardi Gras and the Kid. I think there's an Inca as well. When the facelift occurred in the middle of 1996, the Saxo actually came out before the facelift of 106. That sort of changed to you know, some of the normal X trim levels, and then later on things were added like the Rally 2, the Zest 2, Zest 3. I don't know why there need to be so many Zests. The GTI, the Independence, and the Look. With these, when the 205 production finished in 1998, we only got the 205 till 1996. I think basically they thought the facelifted 106 was good enough to replace the 205 entirely. But in 1998, when production finished for all markets, they reduced the range back because the 206 had come out by then. So just to the GTI, the Zests and the Quicksilver and things like that. The car was built in France in 2 different factories and also in Tunisia for some reason. I don't know why particularly they built these over there, but they did. You can get an automatic, which is a 3-speed. I looked up some of the common faults with these, and apparently it's due to oil leaks, which is common on TU engines. They can sound quite tappety. This is quite quiet, this one, for some reason. I think it was owned by a mechanic before, so that makes sense. The clutches on these they're not great, and they do tend to sort of slip. The rust on this car doesn't look too bad to me. The first area it tends to go, actually, is for the inside out. It's like a 306 or a 205 in that respect. You've got to make sure you look inside the boot and pull the carpet back to make sure you haven't got it doing that, but they're not actually that bad considering their age. So viewers, should you consider a Peugeot 106 with your hard-earned budget of up to £1,000, in this case half that, £500, well, as long as it's okay and it's, you know, there's no rust or anything, the engine's not going to, you know, break the cam belt or anything like that, I don't see why not. I don't know how long Mr. Brisgen's going to have this car. He just sort of is running it around for a bit and seeing how it goes. And, you know, that seems to be the way with most of these days. There's still little cheap runarounds for most people. The GTIs and the Rallies are a lot more interesting. But, you know, this is the top spec of car that most people would have bought back in the day. Anyway, thank you ever so much indeed once again for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like this video, leave a comment below. And we shall see you again soon for some more inexpensive motoring, hopefully with better weather.